So the first part of our webinar is going to focus on creating a high-performance boardroom team with Larry. And then the second part, we have a very special treat today with a mock OC community panel to assess if is Orange County a good place to invest $1 billion. We have some amazing members of the OC community joining us today to discuss this hot topic and share their insights. So at this time, I'm going to have our special guests introduce themselves, starting with Marshall.
Hi, everybody. I'm Marshall Toplansky. I am a clinical professor of management science at Chapman University, and I'm on the school's C. Larry Hogue Center for Real Estate and Finance, as well as a research fellow at the Center for Demographics and Policy. I'm formerly a tech entrepreneur here in the Orange County community, having built a big data sentiment analysis company, and was the co-founder of KPMG's National Center of Excellence for Data and Analytics, and I'm delighted to be here.
Thank you so much for being here today, Marshall. I'm going to hand it over to Peter.
Great. Can all of you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, great. I'm the executive editor at the Orange County Business Journal. Our paper covers an economy, and I've been in this profession for 37 years, which is rather unusual, and includes a decade in Latin America, 15 years at Bloomberg, and so it's covered county.
Fantastic, Peter. Thank you so much for being here. Beth? Beth, can you hear us?
You are muted, sorry.
I know. I was having a little technical difficulty there, but thank you.
Thank you.
I'm Beth Crom. I am former mayor and city council member in the city of Irvine, which is one of the larger cities here in Orange County. I served on the Irvine City Council for 16 years, 4 of those years as the directly elected mayor, and was involved in a lot of interesting things that took place over that period of time. I've also sat on public boards as well as nonprofit boards, and currently have my own company in which I coach and consult. So happy to be here today.
Thank you so much, Beth. Now, Glenn.
Well, thank you very much, Karen. I appreciate it. And thank you for this opportunity to be here with you today. Hello, everyone. I spent 30 years almost at Irvine Valley College, and 18 of those I was president there. I am now president emeritus, and I have joined the California Southern University, which is an entirely online university. And it dates back about 42 years, although not all of that was online, obviously. The technology wasn't there at that time. But really enjoying it. I guess I've been there around 5 months now, and launched a second career.
Fantastic, Glenn. Great to see you. Martini?
Hi, thanks for having me. My name is Martini Nigonal, and I'm the founder of Countsy. And what we do is outsource accounting, finance, and HR for startups. We work exclusively with venture-backed companies, and we function. Our primary role at those companies is to function as their accounting function and then their CFO, including their HR. So I personally have worked obviously with hundreds of companies. I've been at too many board meetings to count. And I'm also a board member of an organization called Joint Venture Silicon Valley. I live in Silicon Valley. We do have clients all over California. It's an amazing state with lots of entrepreneurs. So we can talk a bit more about board dynamics when we come to the panel. Thanks for having me.
Thank you so much for being here. Then we have Linda DeMario.
Hello, everyone. Very nice to be with you this afternoon. I'm the Executive Vice President with the Greater Irvine Chamber, and we have a larger scope of work than most traditional chambers. It includes economic development work that covers business attraction, business retention activities, workforce development, foreign direct investment, initiatives with startups and entrepreneurs, among most of the activities in which we're engaged. So we're delighted to be here with you today.
Thank you so much, Linda. And I think we have Gary on as well, correct?
Yes, hi, Karen. Yeah, my name's Gary Brewer. I've been in California my whole life. had a really successful career in the public and private sector. I've owned several businesses. Most recently, I was part of a company that was acquired by Motorola for $443 million. We were a small part of it because we were an asset purchase from them prior to the acquisition. I've raised my kids here. One of them went to Chapman University, Marshall, so I see you at Chapman University. And I just recently raised $1.3 million from friends and family for a startup called Petsy. It's in the pet healthcare online space, and really excited about that. We launched on the 20th last month, which was Pet Rescue Day and Dog Day, and just really happy to be here.
Thank you so much for being here, and thank you to all our special guests for being here today. Now, without further ado, I'd like to introduce you to Ari Shen. Ari serves on ULP's advisory board and is an executive with a proven track record in building and growing companies. For the last decade and a half, Ari has been deeply involved in the OC innovation and entrepreneurial ecosystem. He has helped many companies in their success and their growth. In addition, Ari has assisted many different organizations by serving in numerous mentoring, lecturing, board advisory, and judging some of OC's innovation competitions. He's constantly working with international companies in developing their market in North America. So without further ado, Ari, thank you so much for being here and giving your time to ULP on our advisory board. I'm going to turn it over to you now.
Thank you so much, Karen. Great to be here with everyone that is on the panel. Appreciate your time and attention. Hopefully that this will be a great program and everyone will come out enjoying and educated a little bit. So Karen, thank you. I, of course, love University Lab Partners and the leadership team. It's the nonprofit mission that has to help the community and grow companies. An area that I'm kind of involved with for the last decade and a half with UCI and other technology hubs, entrepreneur hubs, and of course, as you mentioned, with ULP. I believe in that mission, and I know that more that tech hubs we will have, the better the local economy will be. So as an investor, entrepreneur, mentor in Orange County, of course, I want Orange County to prosper. And I work with several leaders and want us to work together. So just a little bit of background with respect to this event. I attended the Boardroom Performance Group webinar about a month ago, where I first met Larry. And that webinar was aimed at startups from an aspect of how to choose effective board members and how to build a strong board. I was impressed with the content, the why and the how and why to develop a high-performance board. So what I liked was the emphasis on the fact that the board can be really a competitive weapon, and that is what I usually preach for or push for to seek and to search in a growing, emerging technology environment. So why do we need a high-performance board? From my perspective, at least. Being here long-term residents of Orange County and as executive investor, as I mentioned before, and mentor. Here's my take and how would I rank the importance of the why. And now that we all can see this, yeah, sorry about that, just to be sure, the slide is up. So I also was impressed when I heard Martini speak about her experience at the last Boardroom webinar. As she said, she mentioned she's from Silicon Valley and has worked with startups and others, rather large companies such as Facebook and Apple, providing CFO services, financial services, and reporting to the board of directors. So she's here today to share her experience with boards and later participate in the OC community panel. And the purpose of this panel is twofold. A is to discuss an important and pertaining topic, and B, allow us all to have a glimpse into a board, albeit a mock board, so please pay attention to some of the dynamics because this is what we're trying to emphasize, as well as I'm sure that Larry will guide us through those. So to you, Martini, based on your experience in Silicon Valley with startups and boards, What is your take on why companies should have a high-performance board?
Sure. Thanks for asking that question, Ari. You know, and my lens is definitely more corporate boards, private corporate boards. And I think those sort of companies have founders who are extremely driven and smart, but they tend to be very deep in one thing, whether that's technology or the industry. And the great thing about having a board, like you have it here, it's about leverage, right? But leveraging something outside of yourself, because one person can't make something successful. And I think when I look at boards, and the most successful board meetings that I've been at are where there's a group of mutually respectful professionals helping each other. And you come into the board meeting with that attitude of, I'm not the smartest person in this room. Someone else in here has equal or better experience than me to help me solve this problem. So that's like, that also plays in a little bit to board dynamics too, of making sure the people on your board are people that you're going to have that kind of relationship with. So I have a lot of thoughts about that, like about, you know, how if you are in the privileged position of being able to choose your board, and not everybody is, that you do certainly take into account the relationship you're going to have with these people over the next couple of years. Does that sort of answer your question, Ari? Or?
Yes, and thank you so much for that, Martini. So the next poll number 3 that we're going to have is, I'd like to invite everyone in the audience to please think about your why, you know, why a board. And it can be, you know, a crucial bridge and access to capital, to talent, to wisdom. And so let's see how that poll come up. So access to capital, resource contacts is number 1, shared with leveraging the talent beyond your team. Very good. Maximize ROI value did not get a high score, but it's to some degree embedded within the other points as well. So that's a good distribution and an interesting one. Thank you. So now that we covered the why and have a high performance board, let's talk about the how. And so in that vein, I'd like to introduce again Larry Cabaldon, CEO and founder of Boardroom Performance Group. Larry is a seasoned executive and international guide for boards in the mid and large companies market sector. And when tough times and turnarounds were challenging the banking industry, Larry helped many, guiding their boards to meaningful decisions that probably influences the success trajectory for many companies and many lives, as a matter of fact. So Larry, can you share some of your results in helping create high performance board? And unmute, you have to unmute yourself. Yeah.
Well, thank you very much, Ari, for helping put this together. All the people here just about came from your associations in Orange County, and also thank Karen and the ULP system for supporting this event. Yeah, I've had probably 30 years, and my original background was executive recruiting with Price Waterhouse and DHR, one of the top 5. And we use those techniques to evaluate the talent and help the boards be more successful. And the second part of my experience, so I've actually assessed probably 1,400 executives in major merger acquisitions for Bank of America, Wells Fargo, and then many other non-bank operations to figure out how to pick the best talent, how to pick the best CEO in searches when you have 5 candidates. So as a result of that, I probably helped about 12 bank boards with their turnarounds, and it has to be very fast. So the purpose of our firm is not so much the governance, the compliance, is the board, is the talent performing to the standards that are required by the regulators and the investors. And in our experience, most boards are operating at about 70% effectiveness, which means we're leaving a lot on the table. So one of the things that I wanted to share with you today is to focus on boardroom performance, on the talent, and really look at your boards, whether it's nonprofit, private, public, or whatever, and make sure that we're getting the most out of that board. That board is performing its fiduciary obligation. Each of the members, from the chair to the CEO, are all doing their job, and we're reaching our mission, and we're satisfying all of our stakeholders. Otherwise, it's just a nice place to go to have lunch and listen to reports. So this is really the key idea. And when things are going well, like they were doing in banking, everybody thinks they're doing fine until there's a crisis. And the crisis, one of the biggest crises was the 2000 financial meltdown, subprime and so forth. So during that period, we saved 4 banks, but about 465 banks were closed. And quite frankly, the boardrooms in the bank, they're like a nonprofit group that doesn't understand banking that well. They thought things were going well. And then we went in and did an assessment, the regulators, and we found that most of them were operating probably about 60%. And there were changes that had to be made very quickly. So a crisis sometimes brings out the best in people and gets them to really focus on performance. So we have a ton of resources available for private, public, and the community. And the big question in corporate governance, are we effectively utilizing those resources to perform our stewardship duty? And how does that translate into metrics, the boards, and the talent? So that's what we're going to be talking about today. Now, one of the other things I wanted to give was a quick definition is when we talk about a high performance boardroom team, what do we mean? And one of the things I think we get this particularly with technology is we started the definition is high performance is better, faster, and more efficient than others. And this is what we do in the competitive world. So one of the old things, if you look at it, walking was 4 miles per hour. The horse was 24, 80 for a car. A commercial jet goes 600 miles per hour, or 150% faster than walking. And I know most of you know Moore's law about every year we double the performance of the computer chips. I think that's starting to slow down a little bit. But we have a tremendous amount of high performance in our society. The problem is, though, when you're doing this, if your board is 70% and you have all this, it's like your grandmother's driving the race car. It's not going to go. So how do we get all these pieces together so we can really help people build a boardroom? So one of the reasons I'm going to make this part short, because we were very fortunate getting the illustrious panel that I really want to go through the exercise we're doing this afternoon. So instead of giving you all the charts and all the things you need to go through, I thought I'd try to come up with an idea. The first idea is that we had originally is what are the 3 steps, and actually there are 4, to produce an effective boardroom, maybe 100 or 300 effective boardroom. So Sam, if you could put on that slide about real quick. First of all, measure what matters most. And I think a lot of people have focused on this, like John Brewer up in Silicon Valley. So many of the boards that I deal with are not looking at that which is the most important. They could be looking, without upsetting anybody, they could be looking at diversity, the environment, all kinds of other issues. They can be looking at fundraisers if they're not, particularly if they're not a nonprofit. But are they focusing on the 5 things that matter most, that are really going to get the most mileage and protect the organization? Number 2, they got to take massive action within a 90-day time frame. And boards are not used to that. They like to table things. They like to say they're working on it. They like to have another meeting. They want to hire consultants. And then are they actually improving results every year, or are we just rehashing the same issues, the same performance, the same goals every year? And then are they using a performance system? Like even John Wooden with his pyramid, most winning coaches and others, they have a boardroom performing system. So this is how to create a high performance board. So what I'd like to do now is, one more thing that's kind of fun. When I go into the boardroom, one of the things that the boardroom say, well, how can we improve our performance? And one of the answers is that I say to them, I bet 50% of what you're doing is Muda. And Muda is a term not many people know. It comes from lean manufacturing, Toyota quality. My wife, Pat, worked at Boeing, so she's very well versed in this. And it means anything that doesn't add to the value stream. And so in manufacturing, you take out the unessential steps, the machines, the employees. In the boardroom, I asked them, I said, I can probably predict that 50% of what you're doing in the boardroom is Muda. The problem is we don't know which 50% that is. You guys have to determine that. But if you could eliminate 50% of that which is unessential, that doesn't apply to the value stream, you'd have so much more time to focus on the real stuff. So in all of this, if you just kind of looked at the MUDA that you have in your boardroom, the meetings, the protocols and everything else, that would improve your performance 100% right there. The next thing that I wanted to really mention was we developed, as I was interviewing a number of executives for CEO roles, and then when we did the 1,400 executives and board members, we developed a template, and this will kind of wrap up so I don't have to spend too long about the details, a template of how to interview people. And yeah, you can put that up now, Sam, if you would. And so the template is a thought process that we went through when we interviewed people, when we talked to boards, and we're going to demonstrate it. But in summary, ask yourself, are you winning? Is the organization winning? Many people forget that they're trying to achieve something, and what is a win for you? Secondly, are you in harmony with your values? Are you in harmony with the values of the organization, the community, or are you, if you're exaggerating the financial results, you're probably not in harmony with the last church sermon you did as the elder, saying "Thou shalt not lie," or they should be honest. So harmony is one of the biggest causes of failure in the boardroom. So if you see that there's disharmony in the boardroom by certain people, by certain things that are out of alignment, step up. The next one, and this is probably the biggest key, and these are intangibles that we look at first, is what's the attitude in the boardroom? Are the people positive? Are they aggressive? Are they negative? Are they blaming? And I know investors and regulators look very carefully, and I know Martina will probably attest to this. If the CFO has a negative attitude, you're not going to bet any money on them. But if somebody's really trying to build it and they're confident, you'll say, hey, I like that attitude, we're going to go with it. So test the attitude in the boardroom. The next one is truth, telling the truth. And a lot of boards are in denial. They're fogging up the results that they're getting. They're not talking about performance. So the truth is absolutely key. And this is probably one of the reasons we had Sarbanes-Oxley, because a lot of the public companies weren't telling the truth. So demand that you get the truth, because that causes trust and causes investment. Then the other one real quick is doing the right things. Now the board members I deal with, they're not into the checklist with the details, but if I say, well, are you guys doing the right things? Their mind starts to snap, and I'll ask them, do you have the right strategy? Do you have the right values? Do you have the right people in the right spots? And are you doing it right now? Do you have the right resources? So really focus on what is going on that's right or wrong. So the what are the intangibles, if you took one hand, that I expect every senior executive and board member, if we ask them these kinds of questions, they come up with a good answer. And then that's translated into 5 objectives as to what they're doing now or what they plan to do in the future. So are we meeting our financial objectives? Are we changing the culture? So what are the 5 objectives that are important? Now, real quick, what I'd like to do, how are we doing for time? Are we, I think we're okay. We had a scenario. Ari, are you there?
I'm here, yes.
Okay, I just wanted to go through a quick scenario that applies these concepts. And this is one of our mock boards. So put yourself in a mock board framework where I had just completed an assignment with Ari, who's the chairman, and Martina, who is the lead director for a bank that had to replace its CEO. So we went through the What Are 5 process to assess the performance of the CEO. And we were joking about applying this process to who you select for the next president of the United States. And in the boardroom, it's also very emotional about when you're talking about replacing. So Ari was asking me, and well, how would I use this framework? Maybe for political, or to pick a nonprofit CEO, executive director, a new pastor, a rabbi. So one of the things that we talked about, Ari, if you remember, was I sat down with you and said, are you winning? And I think you told me that the CEO was not performing. He had retired almost while on the job. So one of the key things was the board wasn't winning, right?
Yes, indeed.
Now, if you apply this, and this is where we get kind of delicate, if you apply it to who you want to vote for the next president, is the country winning? Is the president doing a winning job? And there's a lot of emotion attached to this, but you have to look at some of the facts and some of the metrics. So the first thing that I always look at for an organization or an individual is I ask the question, are you winning? And then I make the evaluation. So the question, you know, whether you're on the left or the right, is President Trump, is the country winning? And is President Trump winning? And are you winning with his leadership? The second question, and this relates to the president or a CEO, are you in harmony with his values or where the country is going? And a lot of people right now are not in harmony with those values. So how can we resolve that? What do you stand for? What do you believe in that maybe will align with what the president's doing, or maybe you don't? And so, Ari, I don't know, have you thought about, you know, some of your values that might align or misalign, say, with the president? Just you can share without disclosing what party you're in.
No, yeah, I can see the value of this method, of those, at least the first 5 questions, to almost judge and evaluate any type of situation, whether it's a process, a company, an object, or the folks in the helm, CEO, a director. And of course, you can take it to many different avenues like you suggested. So I truly understand that. And I also must admit that, you know, you and I were talking a couple of days ago, and you shared with me an example where, you know, going through that process is somewhat taking a step back, putting a buffer between the emotions and the decisions. And if, you know, you run across many, let's say, mid-sized companies that are actually family held, right?
Yes.
And so do you want to share that example that you shared with me with respect to the difficulty sometimes to remove somebody as a CEO, but yet a board has to take that position or consideration as they fulfilling their fiduciary duty to the business?
That's probably a real good question, and maybe we can avoid the Trump issue until we have a beer. But let's say a couple of years ago, we had a family-owned company that was about $50 million in revenue, making a lot of money. So they were winning in terms of the business. However, they couldn't agree on what the next step was for the business, to the point where they were thinking of selling it for a loss in order to have Thanksgiving together. So the company was winning, but the family members weren't, and they were unhappy with the founder and everything else. So the next part was, are you in harmony? And there was a lot of disharmony. There was counseling. There was all kinds of things because there were family issues. There were issues about, you know, one was an MBA that wanted to do the professional strategy. The founder had a different role. And then the attitude was kind of adversarial and dysfunctional, okay? And then the truth was kind of all over the place if you tried to talk to them. And they were not doing the right things in terms of agreeing on the values. And I would go in and say, well, what about the grandkids? You guys get to quit arguing. So what we did, we helped them get on a program using this process to accomplish 5 objectives in 90-day periods, and do it despite some of their disagreements. So this was a very positive What Are 5. The other thing we've done with this at times, we've done this with couples that, you know, that are saying, well, are you winning? Am I winning? And are we in harmony? And what's our attitude? And are we telling the truth about things? And are we doing the right things? And then what are the 5 objectives we need to do together as a couple to make this What Are 5 better? So if you see at the bottom, it says the What Are 5 is a powerful thought, and we call it a heart process by hundreds of executives, boards of directors, individuals, couples, families, and groups to create more effective lives. And this is almost counterintuitive because a lot of executives think they're hard driving, and we say they have to go through this process first, because this is not a touchy-feely process. It's like, what do you really feel and believe? What's your attitude? And then you go to the 5, which could be the financial metrics, the things you have to do, the checklist. And so we say, basically, here's your what are, and then here's your 5, and you got to put them together to be a total person. So those are some of the tools that you can use because we have a lot of other tools to assess your board and online surveys, but this is pretty much the thought process. So if you're sitting there trying to decide on how the board is doing, or the CEO, or somebody needs to be replaced, this is the thought process that is really, really powerful. And then what the whole group does it, when you finally decide that the CEO isn't performing, we've had this a number of times, the CEOs will often, or the executive director, they'll bring their friends and family onto the board and family companies. So I would ask the directors to kind of think about, do you want to be his golfing buddy? And Ari, you were in his wedding, and Martini, you were doing the business with this bank since it started, or do you want to be a real director? And using these kinds of criteria, we find that most directors will step up and be a real director and fulfill their fiduciary responsibility. Because making the biggest role that a board member has is hiring and firing the CEO. Okay, that's probably the most important role. And so if you're too flippant about it, or you don't take action, you're not fulfilling your major role. So this is one of the major tools for you to do that in a harmonious way. And once we're done, here's what happens. The whole group will say to the CEO, we love you, you're our friend, but you're not performing, and we're going to give you a big severance package, and we're going to come to your dinner, but we're going to have to make a change on behalf of the organization. So otherwise, there's a lot of strife and a lot of disagreement if we don't have this kind of a process.
Well, I also like the fact that you really have a call to action, because sitting on quite a few boards, just like you said, there's a tendency maybe for stretching things, or a lot of, it's turning between the members and so on. And when you call for, let's say, the way that you called in the last line here for 5 objectives in 90 days, coming from at least some positions with publicly traded companies, although there's a lot to be said about that and not everything pleasant. One of the things that we're forced in those environments is really to do things in kind of periods of time that we all know, aware of, that, the quarter is about to end, and then there's a new quarter, and the quarter is about to end. So to have objectives in that type of time interval, I think, is a great motivator and some acceleration of result-driven action,
It's a great point, because the 90 days came from the fact that the regulators said they were going to pull the charter in 90 days if the bank didn't make significant progress. So this is really good, because 90 days, what we found nowadays with the accelerated pace of change, 1 quarter is equal to a year. So if you don't make changes in 1 quarter, you lost a year. And if it took you a year to make those decisions, you've lost 4 years. So getting that sense of urgency causes everybody to think faster, everybody to get the information faster and make decisions, because one of the big things we set up here with performance is speed. I know that wasn't one of the issues, but if you could double your throughput, you could double decisions and get things done faster, you're going to be so ahead of the game. I'm always amazed how fast Samsung gets their phones out. How do they do that? Every 3 months there's a new phone. So the faster you can react, the faster the board can make decisions. And I'm talking about good decisions, not sloppy decisions, but get everybody focused, the better it's going to be. Let's see. Anything else, Ari?
I would recommend maybe that now is a great time to kind of put the next poll question, because it's very relevant to what you just covered. Everyone can pause for a second, perhaps, and think about how would you grade your boardroom. And even if you don't have a boardroom, try to maybe imagine that you do. Think of who you would have invited and try to anticipate the activity and the effectiveness of such group. Of course, this is easier to do with an existing board that you have, but it's always good checkpoint for yourself as a leader in the company to assess the tools and the environment are there to serve you.
That's good. Ari, in our experience and working with other surveys and other groups, we find that most boards are less than 70% effective, which is a huge loss of time and effort. So I'll wrap up my part now, but the main point that I'm trying to make is that we have a tremendous opportunity to improve the performance of our boards, which will then improve the business performance, the community performance, and so forth. So what I want you guys, everybody in the audience, almost to start becoming so sensitive to an ineffective board that you're almost programmed to take some action in a 90-day period. And it doesn't have to mean that you have to do everything in 90 days, but you got to get it going, make the changes, look at the talent, and do everything that's possible. Otherwise, you'll find there's a tendency to just go through the motions and continue at 70%. So I'm finished, Ari, so you want to move on to the next with Karen?
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Larry. And some great tips that even ULP, Ari, we have some work to do.
Oops.
So I'm going to rely on you to lead that charge with me.
Okay. I'd be happy to.
We do have a question that came through the Q&A box from Raphael. Now, are there any personal risks to being on a board? And if so, how can they be mitigated?
I think the biggest personal risk, and this is if you're a fiduciary board member, which usually what's a private public company, right, Martini? If you're a fiduciary board member, you know, and that's where all the focus has been with my clients, is that you have a fiduciary responsibility laid out by law, okay, and laid out by the regulators and investors, and you have a tremendous liability. And this really started coming about when Sarbanes-Oxley, you know, a few years ago with the financial meltdown with Enron and so forth. All of a sudden, everybody said, "Hey, we're not just going to blame the CEO anymore. We're going to hold the board accountable." So if you're on a public company board, you can have a tremendous amount of liability. That's why they have D&O insurance and so forth. On the other hand, if you're on a private company board, there's less liability. And if you're in an advisory capacity, the way it's set up, and I don't want to make this too simple. So, you know, what should we say? Go to your attorney to find this out. But there are some boards where you don't have any of this serious full liability. So usually public companies, you have that fiduciary liability, which is, you know, you could have civil money penalties. They can throw you in jail. They can do all kinds of things. And then, you know, for the regular other companies, there's some legal liability. And now for all boards, there's a tendency that you could get sued if there's even, you know, because there's so many suits anyway, that, you know, if the receptionist claims sexual harassment, maybe you can get sucked in even if you're not on a public company. But the ultimate one is the public companies. Now, the beauty of the public company boards, though, is that you could be on the average making $200,000. Okay, so there's some reward for you being on a public company board, accepting that responsibility. So there is liability, but to me, the biggest responsibility that you have.
I was going to say, there are private company boards, certainly venture funded companies, right? When they have a 5 or 7 member board, the board members, you know, the directors and the officers do have fiduciary responsibility. So there is some risk, to answer the gentleman's question. There is risk there. Typically, that's mitigated by getting, as you mentioned, directors and officers insurance.
So you got to be very careful. Real quick,
if you're joining a private company board, you should ask to.
You should ask, and also what you're going to find when you're being recruited by a board, it's sometimes an honor, so you're flattered. Ask them about the D&O insurance. Ask them for, you know, what's that other term where, you know, they subordinate to the risk, or you know, out to somebody else. So you know, you have them sign that, you know, you guys are going to take the risk for this. So find out very quickly, because it's very flattering when somebody calls you, even for a nonprofit board, and says, "Hey, we heard about you. We want you to be on the board." And, you know, it's all like really nice, but going on a board that's dysfunctional you have a choice. You don't have a choice for your dysfunctional family on Thanksgiving, but you have a choice for what board you join. And you may be on that board for 20 years, even longer than you might be with your family. So you got to be very careful. But the short answer is it depends on which type of company.
All right. Well, thank you for your insight. I want to, at this time, have Ari bring the highlight of today's webinar. So Ari, I'm going to hand it off to you here.
Thank you, Karen, and thank you, Larry, for sharing those 3 steps, and especially the what are 5 sequence to help us create a high performance board.
And Ari, real quick, I don't care how you vote, but just be thoughtful about it, because when we assess a board, you know, it's up to them to make the decisions. But I'm going to ask the question, sort of the investors, what were the decision points that you looked at? And did you think that Trump was some kind of, I can use the derogatory, or you thought he was a god? That ain't enough. You have to have some backup for your opinion in the boardroom.
Absolutely. So after this section or session, I won't be able to tolerate any ineffective boardroom team. So thank you for that. So this is a good segue to our next section of this webinar. And I'd like to see how we can apply the 3 steps and the What Are 5 to create a high performance board in Orange County, in business, universities, association, nonprofit, ministries, family-owned companies, and the community. So how many of you ever watched reality TV shows like The Profit or Extreme Makeover or Bar Rescue or even Flip or Flop? These shows are fun because they take real people and situations and create a dramatic story. So Larry Cabaldon has created several mock boards for various conferences because it emphasizes and it kind of makes the story much more vivid and memorable. So today we have a mock community panel, and I'm going to describe briefly the scenario, and we're going to walk into that playroom, boardroom, and see it unfolded. So here's the scenario. A major group of investors is considering investing $1 billion in Orange County. The group of investors retained Larry Cabaldon, the boardroom consultants, to conduct due diligence before they invest. And as part of the due diligence, Larry has called a panel of OC business/community leaders to answer a few key questions. Bottom line, should we, or he's trying to gather the information of should the group invest the $1 billion in Orange County? What are the pros? What are the cons? What are the key issues? So, distinguished board members, Larry will engage in a discussion with you on those issues. And I welcome you to provide insight to the topic that is discussed. And also, when you feel like, to step out of the character role in the mock board and point out observations, if you want, regarding the board dynamics. Because you all have rich experience in many boards flavors, and everyone around you, including the audience, will be learning from your accumulated experience and knowledge. So Larry, take it away. Thank you.
Yeah, you know, we do a lot of conferences for board related, and I can tell you the truth, they're really boring. And I came out of Hollywood High School. I did consulting with Paramount, and I was in a movie as an extra, Hawaiian, what was it, Diamond Head with Charlton Heston. So I have a Hollywood background. So I always like to kind of say, well, can we make this a little more entertaining? Otherwise, man, I fall asleep. So this is you know, it's like I create these scenarios just to give you something. I can write a script and pretend I'm creative, and we can have some fun with it. So let me get into my role now. My client has asked me to conduct a due diligence study. And we've done a ton of these for various reasons. Should we acquire the company? Should we invest in it? And my team has been gathering information, researching, and interviewing people in the community. And we called this meeting to ask our hand-picked panel for their expert views. Okay, so this is I'm going to ask you questions, and you know, I like direct answers, instead of maybe handing me a brochure about, you know, the beautiful Orange County weather and so forth, because that's implied. So my client is very interested in Orange County. Several of their board members have been on vacations or business meetings in Orange County. One actually graduated from UCI years ago. They love Orange County. You know, Orange County is one of the best places to live. The climate, recreation, education, entertainment. So these senior investors want to live here. So, you know, we have an advantage. And some of them already have vacation homes in Newport Coast, okay? Their second home, and their families and grandkids are here. So, you know, whatever we can do to kind of sway them so that they still have to go to the other board members and say, you know, here's the due diligence that we did. But I'm always surprised when I go into the boardroom and they do these big relocation studies. And I would imagine there's a huge correlation between where they move and where the chairman lives or wants to live. Okay, so we're kind of dealing with that issue. so we need to look about, affordability and, Marshall knows what you guys have all studied this, had to work with this, had to persuade people, infrastructure. So each of the panelists that we brought together represents business, government, education, media, investors. So we want to hear from them on the key issues and their recommendations for improvement. So I think this is going to be fun because we've talked to each of you before, and I think you all have a very interesting perspective, and everybody on this panel has a great heart for Orange County. Even Gary Brewer, the guy that's leaving and I'm going to introduce next, he has a huge heart for Orange County. So as I go through, I'm going to ask each of you some questions. We'll go back and forth a little bit. And I want to be able, in fact, some of my investors internationally are probably on this Zoom right now, kind of evaluating your answers. So, hopefully we can give them some answers. We'll have a few polls for the audience to kind of see if they agree with the key issues. The key issues are. So maybe we'll do the poll right now, Sam. If these are some of the issues that have been coming up. So maybe the audience can pick one of these as maybe one of the key issues that they think would apply, and we'll see what the audience says before we go to the experts. Let's make a bet, Marshall. Let's bet on what it's going to be.
So you want us to just make everybody feel good and sing Kumbaya for Orange County at the end of this, or what's your goal, Larry?
No, our goal is to advise the investor whether Orange County is a good investment. So it's not just a brochure. Okay, here is it. Affordable housing, 23%, and then the big one is the business-friendly entrepreneurial community. Okay, then lifestyle, affordable housing's 2. Lifestyle is 3, and then we have better government, and we have a qualified talent pool, okay? And I know we've talked with many of you about these issues, and some of you have some real good takes on those issues, but that's what our esteemed audience is saying now. So whenever I do a boardroom project for a turnaround, I'll usually interview all of the parties involved. And what I really try to find is somebody that really loves the company, but is resigned, and he's on his way out. So he's the guy that is probably going to tell me the truth, and he's not going to have any rancor about the organization, but he's going to be the one telling me the truth. So we found somebody like this, and you heard his introduction before. Gary Brewer, after 40 years of living in Orange County, is going to move to Arizona. So Gary, can you kind of give me a little about your history, and then I'll get into some of the issues of why, and we can talk about that. And Gary, can you get off mute? And Gary's at the U-Haul location right now, renting his trailer.
So, well, like I said, if you asked me 20 years ago if I would ever be leaving California, I would have said you're crazy. We had this significant liquidity event, and I told my wife, I said, hey, honey, we've got this big windfall coming, and we really need to move to somewhere like Texas or Florida or Nevada because we're going to get crushed on taxes. And she goes, I don't want to leave California. My mom's here. Our kids are here. So, long story short, and after paying, the Fed corporate tax, the Fed income tax, the California corporate tax, and then the highest California tax, there wasn't a whole lot left over. So basically, I started looking around and I said, maybe it was time to move. And I looked over to Arizona and I just started doing the math. And I can go through it for you, Larry, but it's pretty staggering if you want to know the details.
What was the biggest tax issue or financial issue that kind of motivated you to consider this? Because it must be pretty onerous for you.
Well, first of all, California is the second most expensive state behind Hawaii. We have the second most expensive energy costs, and that's primarily because the state has abandoned nuclear power and they're not invested in the fossil fuel infrastructure. They've got a real aggressive agenda to make half our energy renewable. the cost of real estate, I mean, I'm selling my house here for $390 a foot. I'm on a 4,100 square foot house up in, Chiquita Canyon. And my home over in Arizona is on a 12,000 square foot lot, and it's $204 a foot. My property tax bill here goes from $18,000 a year to $4,300 a year. My association dues here are $307 a month. There, it's $190 a quarter. Gas here is $3.07. It's $2.27 there. And the main thing was the state income tax is half. So we did the math, and I just said, it's time to leave. And to be quite frankly, what pushed me over the edge is just some of the liberal policies of the government. We have a high homeless rate. We have high crime rate. And as much as I love California, as much as my parents are still alive, they live here. My kids are here. My wife's mother and father are here. But we did the math, and we just said, you know what? It's time to go. And by the way, Larry, they did a survey, Edelman Intelligence did a survey, and they said 53% of people in the state of California are considering moving. That's up from 49% last year. And of the millennials, it's 63% because they can't afford the housing.
Well, that's a good point. But let me ask you this too, like the millennials now, how old are you, Gary, if you would say?
64.
So you're 64. You look like a surfer boy with gray hair.
This is my hair. It's real. It's real. Don't worry.
Well, what I was going to ask you is that, man, you're going to retire with all this windfall. You get a house behind a gated community and say, the hell with all this. Why do you care?
Well, I thought about this. My wife and I thought about it, and I'm not going to stop working. I'm going to continue to work. I'm just not going to work as a California resident anymore. I'm just not. And as painful as it is to leave, we love it here. Our family's here. We love the weather. We just think that, our lifestyle is going to be different. It's going to be, obviously, we're at 5,300 feet. But, it's just what it's going to afford us to be able to do from the extra disposable income is going to just open up so many doors and so many opportunities. And that was really our primary decision. I don't mean to throw a wet blanket over your billion-dollar decision to invest in Orange County. I think it's a wonderful place. But those were my decisions and why we were choosing to move.
Excellent. Well, Gary, thank you very much. That was a good start. And I was joking with him. I said he could run for office. Maybe he'll win a spot here. Then he could live in Arizona and not tell anybody, right? So.
I got my flag.
Now, I think we might have an interesting, some interesting counterpoints to this. But I wanted to start off with a real person that wasn't just a homeless guy living on the street, just a regular guy in Orange County. So I was really charmed with Marshall when I met him a couple of years ago. My wife Pat, and not only he's brilliant, but I also want to sell my company to KPMG. So can you be on my board to make that happen? But anyway. Marshall, I was very impressed with all the research you did, and you were the co-author. What's it called? The Orange County
Orange County Focus.
Yes, and when did you publish that?
We completed that we did two versions of it. The initial study was 2016, then we did a 2017 version. And actually, since then, we've expanded out our view to the state of California. So we published Joel, and when I say we, I mean Joel Kotkin, yes. Who many of you know, and I published a study on the state of the California economy, specifically the squeeze on the middle class, which is, Gary, we're going to miss you, but this is exactly what we're talking about. So, and now we're just about to publish, in fact, it'll be out next week, our set of solutions of how to solve the middle class crisis in California.
Well, can you do it before Gary leaves?
Yeah. Well, we have some of the political, political elite here on the panel, so maybe they can handle that for us.
Well, let me ask you a question. Can you summarize some of the findings, your recommendations, and give us some of your insights that, inside information that might be helpful from your perspective?
Sure. Well, and let me do it in the context of the question you originally asked, sure. Larry, which is, should I invest $1 billion in Orange County? And the real answer to that, since capital always flows to where it gets the highest return, right? Yes. It's just the immutable law of nature. The real question is compared to where and for what, right? So if you wanted to invest $1 billion to build a manufacturing plant, this would be about the worst place you could possibly do it, unless you happen to like, you know, a life of being abused by the state regulatory authorities. It is just not a place that California as a whole is not a place that is really manufacturing friendly. Now, having said that, if your question is, hey, I want to build a tech company, and my competitive alternative is Silicon Valley, well, then actually Orange County is a really very viable alternative, because we have some great talent, great universities, including UCI and Chapman, and I'm presuming in the future the California Southern University, which is producing some fabulously qualified people. The biggest problem that I think we face is that unless you're a super highly compensated individual, you're not really going to be able to afford the kind of California lifestyle that you've been kind of, you know, pre-programmed to want. It's really hard to find a house, and really and housing is just a huge problem. Who knows what this COVID thing is going to bring? It may very well be that we find a lot of people working out of Riverside, which has had a huge increase in population, while we have basically been flat, maybe slightly down, depending upon which statistics you see, compared to LA, which has actually lost population. So we could, if we see a lot of remote work, see Orange County businesses thrive with a workforce that commutes in from next door. A lot of regulatory positives have to come together. The state has to kind of reorient its thinking toward vehicle miles traveled, which is the new buzzword for getting any kind of project approved. You have to show that you're not going to increase the number of people driving even with electrical cars, which is kind of nuts. But the core talent that we have in Orange County, especially in the physical sciences, in med tech in particular, is very, very strong. So if you want to put your $1 billion into that, I'd say go for it. If you're looking to compete with South Coast Plaza, maybe there's other places you can build a great retail facility if people still end up shopping.
Well, that's a great comment, Marshall, because I think one of the other panelists are going to be like you, a little more strategic, because there is so much information. I think the Orange County Business Council put out a big report a day ago or so. You're going to put out your report, and I tried to read it, and I fell asleep after a while because there was so much information. It was good information, but I think the idea that you're talking about is to strategically figure out where you want to invest, what industry, not manufacturing, and then here are some of the issues, and that's exactly what I wanted to hear. And I'm going to come back to you, but Peter, as the business guy, the guy that keeps track of everything, I think you had a very good insight as, I don't know if you heard me, Peter had a really good, I think, solution or idea about how we could attract, the money. And I think you were talking about some of the senior talent that we have here that I've never, I know, but I never thought of that idea. Could you elaborate on that?
Certainly. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, fine.
Okay, great. Well, listen, if you got $1 billion and there are two places, the biggest place to obviously look is Silicon Valley. But, there's so much money chasing investments up in Silicon Valley. I think one year it was like $63 billion in venture capital, and here at Orange County it was $2 billion. So what happens up there in Silicon Valley, everybody's competing against each other, the valuations go higher. And down here, you get more bang for your buck here. So let me break it down to about 10 different fields here, if I may. If you're building a board, I would suggest looking around at the talented executives just below the CEO level, running some of the most dynamic companies you'll see worldwide. And let me go down, I know Marshall said manufacturing is a bad place, but I might make an exception for that, and I'm sure he'll agree with me, and that's in medical devices, because you've got Edwards, which is making heart stents, And they're obviously top of the line there, and they're the highest value company in the Orange County, $50 billion market cap. Other medical device makers, Massimo, which is making these devices for wireless monitoring of oxygen and blood pressure, Glaukos, eye stents. Got Star Surgical. They're making implantable eye lens. So those are four in the medical device maker. Orange County is really a dynamic area in a variety of different areas. In tech, one of the hottest software companies is Alteryx, which is making data. And so that's a really good area. We also have tech security. You might remember Cylance was bought by BlackBerry for $1.3 billion a year or so ago. In real estate, we got some of the world's smartest people in real estate, including Donald Brennan, who's the richest man in real estate in the U.S. And then you got Igor Oludnikov, who's the second richest man in Orange County, and he's done very well. You just got this whole level of talent in real estate. Then you got mortgage industry. Loan Depot, Anthony Hsieh, I wrote a front page profile on him. I mean, he started this 10 years ago, and he's up to, probably do more than $2 billion in sales this year. You got Glenn Stearns. I don't know how many of you saw Undercover Billionaire. He's only worth 500 million, but they said Undercover Billionaire. So he was on that show, and he's starting his new company now. You got the restaurant chains. You got Taco Bell here. You got Pickup Sticks. Charlie Zhang came out of nowhere. Got up to 100 franchises before selling them. You got Chipotle. Chipotle, why did it come from Denver to Newport Beach, of all places? Because the talent was here. And then, I remember talking to Optima Tax Relief. I don't know if you guys ever talked to those guys. I heard a radio announcement, Optima Tax Relief. And the CEO told me something very interesting. He said, the people who work in Orange County, the employees are top tier, and because they want to live here. And so they'll do what's necessary to make an adjustment to the cost of living and stuff. And they'll work really hard, and they'll figure it out. And so you got the top flight investors. You got Vinnie Smith, who's a billionaire, and the like. And you should go find out whatever Vinnie Smith is investing in and try to figure out how to get in on that game, because he just knows his stuff. He's got the Midas touch. Then you got PIMCO, one of the world's biggest bond managers, $2 trillion assets under management down there at Newport Beach, Fashion Island. And so if you can pick off some of their mid-level portfolio managers. A couple weeks ago, I profiled a portfolio manager who had a 400% return during the first quarter. Who did that? It turns out he sells a sort of like a type of insurance there, puts and the like. And then you have home builders. You got TriPoint, $2 billion. You got Bill Lyons, his father died a few weeks ago, and he was a giant, And then you have other industries that are quite interesting. Pacific Dental, has grown up. It was supposed to do $2 billion in sales this year. Who's ever heard of it? Nobody really. They'll do $1 billion because of the pandemic. And then you also have Allied Universal, which was started, this guy named Steve Jones arrived there 25 years ago when it was 12 million in revenue. Now he's up to $8.5 billion in sales. And he's the nation's largest provider of security guards. And he's branching out in a whole variety of ways. And his company's worth $8.5 billion. So if I was looking to build my board, I would look at the talent around here and invite the people, mid-level executives, not the CEOs because they're super busy, but right there, the CFOs, the controllers, the people who know how to make those dynamic companies happen.
Peter, thank you so much. Because I asked myself, what is unique about Orange County that would attract? And, coming out of search and human resources, I forgot it's the talent. And I think it's the talent. I was reading one of the surveys about, the gap between affording to live here and your income. I think the percentages were who makes over 200,000. And I think the people you're talking about are probably those people who are making over 200,000 that are very talented. And quite frankly, and I did the Director of the Year when I was on the board of the Forum for Corporate Directors. Now we had 130 honorees, and just Peter Uberoth, he's good on the Bill Lyon. We have a tremendous amount of talent. So I'll make this quick observation because I'm going to go to Linda. You do the chamber, and you have some interesting strategies. It could be that my investors that are watching it said, well, here are some of the industries, here's some of the creativity, and here are some of the guys and gals that you may want to invest in, because that's what you invest in when you go to an area, It's the talent, and we have some superior, and many guys, and even Gary was, he sold his company, had a big payday, but look at the other guys that have sold their companies that still have another 30 years to go that want to do something that that $1 billion could be salted around, and then picking the right industry and getting the right heads together, I think would be very helpful. So Peter, thank you so much. We'll get back to you. Linda, you had, what are you, Executive Vice President of the Chamber in Irvine?
Yes, sir.
And you gave me some really interesting strategies. And my term is, strategy is not only what you do, it's what you don't do. And you gave me some interesting insights. Could you kind of elaborate for the group and others that what is your approach to attract companies to Orange County, and that you've been successful in doing it?
Yeah, we play to our strengths.
Yes.
And so we're not competing with with low wage, no ordinance or regulations states like Texas, for example. We just don't. Iowa, Nebraska, we don't. It doesn't make any sense. We do compete with, domestically, we compete with 4 companies out of the Bay Area, because we are literally 30 to 40% across the board less expensive to set up shop here and sustain a business and grow one. And we recently penetrated Boston for the life science sector and tech sector there. Why? Because real expensive to do business there. A lot of companies in life science technology looking to establish a West Coast beachhead. We're taking our message to them. Same thing with the United Kingdom. That's what started our foreign direct investment work. The United Kingdom, let me tell you, Orange County, Southern California generally looks like a screaming deal. It's not only expensive to do business there, but they don't have the talent pool that we have here. And, you go back to climate. I hate it, but literally a UK CEO who was picking up an award at Octane's High Tech said it best. And that's what I would say to you as an investor. If you are investing here in any of the 21st century industries that are literally the bedrock of Orange County, life science, technology, broad spectrum in both areas, as well as advanced manufacturing. And when you look at that, what this CEO said was, I wrote it down because I loved it so. He said, this is the most inspiring place to grow a business. And then he went like this and said, who wouldn't want to live here and work here?
Wow.
And then he followed it up with, I have no problem finding quality people because the talent, they want to be here and live here. So that's coming, that completely unsolicited testimonial, but it confirms and underpins the set of strategies that we've developed, which, we compete where it makes sense for us to compete. We compete with our greatest strengths. And I love to say this, but California is the 5th largest economy in the world. Southern California is the 13th largest economy in the world. And Orange County, their GDP of $298 billion annually is greater than that of 28 states in this country.
Wow.
Oh, I say to you, how bad can it be? How bad can it be? I tell you, like attracts like, strength attracts strength. The critical mass that we have among our 21st century sectors is so intense, as Peter points out. It's so intense, so strong, so underpinned well, that the innovation ecosystem is just coherent and tangible, and companies are attracted to that. Gary is a classic example of the net in and out migration that we have. When you drill down on that, you will find it's pretty much net out and in. And you may laugh at this, but the #1 feeder state for in-migration, wait for it, folks, Texas. So I found that fascinating, but the out-migration is usually driven by those who are of the age that Gary is at. They're looking for a place to extend their resources, and or the lower skilled, lower wage people that are just not finding the same number of opportunities here that they might in other states. So you put all of those, all of those things together, and as I said, taking it to the right places, taking it to the right companies. I look at it through the eyes of the companies that we see and work with. And let me tell you, for all the things that we may have to pay attention to, for all the things that we may have to tweak and fix and make better, our assets make us an extraordinary and very competitive area in which to grow a 21st century industry.
Perfect. No, I really appreciate it, because the three of you hit some key areas. Because I remember when I used to go shopping for luxury cars when I had a lot of money in Hollywood, you walk into a Jaguar place or a Bentley place, and they won't wait on you if you ask them what the price is. Because they assume that you are on that level where you want to come to get a car that meets your requirements, so you don't care about gas mileage. What you want is, I want what I want and I can afford it. So I think the strategy of picking the industry, of all the talent that we have here at the, not the startup talent, we'll talk to Glenn about the other talent, but the talent that we have, that leadership talent, the people that are created and sold, and then how you're doing it out there, not competing with Austin, because you're going to say, hey, it's a Wild West show, but there's no zoning. Now, the other part, and we'll talk a little bit to Beth later on, is then, how can we kind of balance this a little bit? Because, I want it to be a Wild West, but I don't want it to be so I can't drive my car down the street. I have to walk. Okay. So we have to balance all these things, but thank you so much. And I think I'll turn to maybe to Glenn. We were talking about the talent issues, and you were very thoughtful in talking about how education and business can work. I think you mentioned Edwards Life Science. Could you elaborate on what you were describing the other day?
Sure, yes. Thank you, Larry. And what we were talking about is, what is a real attractor, I think, into Orange County. And I think that's education. As we look from our K-12 schools all the way up through universities, you have a high density of high quality education going on. Now, as it relates to boards also, is that it was many years ago, actually the end of the last Bush presidency and well into the Obama era, there was a re-emphasis for education that I think a lot of us missed, and a very strong push for workforce development. And that is making sure that our colleges and universities are focusing more on the endpoint, on what those careers look like and being prepared for them. So that's a real benefit. I think we are still suffering, though, from a skills gap, whether it is a technical skills gap or a soft skills gap, particularly in the technical fields. And so we're very good at producing our high-level folks. They're high quality, very good talent. And I was surprised to see on your survey that only 15% was shown as being important for your talent pool. So,
I saw that.
Interesting. And so when you think of a typical large business, you've got a lot of technical folks compared to the number of the C-suite, right? And I'm being told, and continue to be told, and I've worked with Linda for years on this, and thank you, Linda, for allowing me to work with you on it, but trying to identify what those gaps are. And we're being told that the technical field employees are going into business maybe 70, 60% prepared to do the work that they were hired to do. And so what that does is it puts pressure back on the business to do their own in-house training. And so, as I mentioned the other day, I would love to see an economic survey of what it costs our businesses across Orange County to do that education when you've got a wonderful pool of educational entities that can do that work. So one thing that I have not been able to do, working a decade on this, is to find an effective way to bring education and business together in an enterprise that will produce a highly talented technical work pool that can help support our businesses and help also close the valve on our talent leakage, because we lose a lot of folks out of Orange County. And whether they can afford to go live here, or as many of you have spoken of, there's less expensive areas to work and live. How can we find a way to keep them here? Well, I think the answer to that is to find an effective partnership between business and education that can actually build that cohort in partnership for the next talented employee that you're going to hire. So
Yeah,
it takes,
Glenn, that's a good point. And I think one of the points that hit me when you were talking about this, I don't think it's violating any confidence. Is I think you said that Edwards had to create some of their own training because the comment was made that the employees, the graduates, were 70%. Remember, measure what matters most. They were 70% qualified to start working, and they had to do a lot more work to get them to that point. So I think we're running out of time, but I think the idea then is that can we use business and education to create graduates that are 100% ready to go to work with a little orientation by Edwards, because then you said they could focus on other innovation and things and not just have to do training. So I think that's one of the things that maybe we need to work on, but I think that there's a lot of talent here that the investors can really take advantage of at the technical level and at the high end. I want to rush, but thank you, Glenn, and I appreciate it. And Beth, you were mayor and city council, and you went through, I think I heard one of your podcasts about the Great Park, and I think you could probably be in a good position to address some of the issues between government, business, and community that, that maybe didn't enable you to reach the vision that you were trying to achieve at the Great Park. So maybe you can stress what that is, because one of the poll things was kind of a business friendly environment. And so how do we do that while balancing it so there's a good lifestyle? So I'd love it if you could just spend a few minutes addressing that. Your sound.
I know. First of all, I want to say, Linda, you did a great job. And Linda and I are both from Buffalo. So, you know, when you grow up in Buffalo, you learn how to be a booster for your community despite the odds. So that definitely came through. And I think a lot of the points I would have made have been made. I actually want to touch on, while the Great Park would make a wonderful course of study, what I want to mention, because I don't think, with all due respect to all of us who are on this, there's something missing even in the optics of this panel. And that is that Orange County is a county of extraordinary diversity. We are a global county. We have a lot of businesses based here in Orange County that are international companies that are world leaders in their fields. And, you know, when you are talking about attracting talent, you know, if you're going to be relying on a talent pool that is diverse, you want those people to be able to live in a place where their children can attend schools that help to reinforce those cultural and even religious connections. I mean, Irvine, as an example, clearly the business hub of Orange County, one of the most diverse and thoroughly integrated cities anywhere in the world, a city where education is very much a cornerstone of our community, IVC, UCI. I talk to people at the university about the fact that this is one of the rare places where everything that's being taught at the university has a real world application just over the fence. So there are experiences you can have here in Orange County. I, as mayor, often pointed out that children growing up in a city like Irvine got to experience the world without ever leaving our city. In fact, many of our young people go off to college in other parts of the country and are stunned to find out that the kind of diversity they experience here is not ubiquitous across the entire country. So I think, you know, what is important and, you know, what's embedded in everything that we in government do is how do you fundamentally build community? You need a strong economic base, but you also need strong educational resources. You need nonprofits and collaborations. You know, Glenn was talking about collaborations between business and education. I think one of the things we continue to work on here in Orange County is that part of Orange County is still stuck in the past. I mean, it's not a negative for the people who aren't stuck there with them, but, you know, because we have incredible innovators here. But I think if you ask certain people what Orange County is, their frame is still very much rooted in what Orange County was. And people who are coming here now and investing now are encountering an Orange County that a lot of people who've been here for a long time don't even see in quite the same way. So I think we
Beth, can I interrupt you? We're almost running out of time, so I appreciate what you're saying. Because
it's always good, Larry, to leave the politician to the end of the program.
the point I'm going to make, I'm turning it over to Karen. Thank you all, because and Martini, I think we're going to save you for next time, because I think you got a lot to offer. But what I like to just sum up with, and Karen, you can do it, is that I think everybody working together on trying to solve these issues, and I think the main one we're talking about here is the business investment issue, and then the community has nonprofit, social issues, and everything. And one of the things I like to see is a kind of a board framework, so it's not just talk, so that next year we have achieved some of these things that we're talking about, and we've committed to some objectives. But I'm going to turn it over to Karen now. But thank you all so very much for being on the panel.
Beth, if I give you the floor for 1 minute, will you keep it to 1 minute?
Oh, I'm fine. Feel free to go forward. I'm good.
We got to cut to commercial, right, Karen?
Well, one thing we do want to, make sure we segue to is, we don't want this to be a one and done. We want to continue to engage in this conversation. So first and foremost, I want to say a big thank you to our very distinguished guests on this panel today. Your service and your insight to this community doesn't go unappreciated. And also to Boardroom Performance Group, thank you, Ari, for setting this all up and making this happen today.